I don't fear AI anymore because it couldn't possibly be any more robotic than the humans who run things now.
What if the most famous liberal in late-night television just became the loudest voice against the very state he calls home? Bill Maher didn't just offer a standard, polite critique of Gavin Newsom. He effectively pulled the pin on a massive rhetorical grenade, tossed it directly into the center of the political room, and stood back to watch the entire carefully crafted narrative of California's success shatter into a million pieces. This wasn't just a disagreement over policy. It was a full-scale demolition of the status quo that has left viewers and politicians alike absolutely stunned. By calling out the governor on a national stage, Maher has signaled that the frustration with the current leadership has finally reached a breaking point that can no longer be ignored by the mainstream media or the elite establishment in Sacramento.
You can't call it a drought if it happens all the time. In a story I'm getting tired of reporting, California is running out of water, and this time just when we started showering again. 19,000 acres of forest have already burned this year, and 72% of the entire West is in severe drought. Turns out hot girl summer is for reals.
With California sinking further into what critics describe as a labyrinth of bureaucratic stalling and elite detachment, Maher refused to pull his punches. He took aim directly at Newsom, systematically shredding the bloated mandates and ivory-towered edicts that define the state's current leadership. You cannot afford to miss a single second of this scathing postmortem. If you're tired of the spin and crave unfiltered truth, hit that subscribe button and let's get into the chaos.
The median time to get approval to build a house there is 627 days. That's 217 days longer than it took to build the Empire State Building. You need 87 permits, 15 from the Planning Commission, 26 from the Public Utilities Commission and the Fire Department, 19 from building inspectors, 17 from the Public Works, 10 related to public spaces, and 1 from a guy in a T-shirt that says Federal Inspector. It's no wonder that in 2021, San Francisco issued only 2,000 permits for new homes. Sure, there are people living in the streets, but that's because we want to make sure the apartments they don't live in are perfect.
Imagine the scene. A literal mountain of regulatory hurdles standing between a family and their right to build a simple home. The administrative gridlock is a total disaster. Maher highlights the shocking reality that it now takes 3 times longer to get a permit than it took to build world-famous skyscrapers a century ago. This explains why, long after the horrific Los Angeles fires, the rebuilding process remains a ghost town. Latest data reveals the majority of survivors are still trapped in temporary setups, scattered across the country or even forced overseas. You'd assume a state with the highest tax burden in America would prioritize its citizens. Instead, California's leadership is doing the exact opposite.
California is the place that spends money and gets nothing, which is why you may have noticed when the fires broke out, no one escaped by high-speed rail. We have the highest marginal tax rate in America, higher than almost all other states, and soon Greenland. Now, is wokeness the main reason for the fires? Of course not. But it's also not wrong to associate some of the unforced errors our government made with the things normies see as hallmarks of uber-progressive politics: questionable budget priorities, high taxes that get you nothing, making everything about identity politics, virtue signaling overseas instead of tending to the nuts and bolts at home.
Precisely. This is the inevitable wreckage when radical ideology is prioritized over basic competence. California has become the ultimate warning to the rest of the nation. When politicians are more concerned with virtue signaling and expanding government overreach into every corner of your life, the foundation begins to crumble. We've seen this movie before. Look at the water crisis. Residents have been screaming about the catastrophic droughts and empty reservoirs for a decade. A serious leader would have fixed the infrastructure years ago. Yet, under the Newsom administration, the crisis is ignored while he chases headlines on national pet projects.
We have spent the last 2 decades in perpetual drought here, yet almond farmers in California have doubled in that time. Despite the fact that almond production alone uses more water than all the humans and businesses in San Francisco and Los Angeles combined, even on days when your teenage son spends 2 hours showering. Look at this chart of how much water it takes to grow different crops. Oranges, tomatoes, strawberries all take about 11 gallons to make 1 pound. Almonds, 1,900 gallons. That wasn't a problem back when it rained, but now there simply isn't enough water to go around, and we have to make a painful choice, getting it to the people or getting it in the nuts.
And Maher is hitting the bullseye. California has zero room for these types of failures, especially as the wildfire seasons grow more intense and destructive. The safety net is gone. The ultimate insult is Newsom demanding that everyday citizens take shorter showers and let their lawns die, a move that does virtually nothing. In reality, massive almond operations consume nearly 90% of the state's liquid gold. While families get lectured on conservation, the massive industrial players keep the taps wide open. It's a double standard that goes even deeper. The massive conglomerates are draining the state dry, yet they never face the same restrictions as the taxpaying public.
You know, it's not like California doesn't know how to regulate. They know. We are the most regulated state in the nation with more than 395,000 regulatory restrictions. It is a constant nightmare of inspectors and permits and fees. In this state, if you get to your car 10 seconds after the parking meter expires, it's already gone and you'll never see it again. California has rules about every nitpicky thing you can imagine. If you don't believe me, try parking in Santa Monica, or starting a business, or getting your solar power hooked up.
It's no mystery why the average citizen feels like the entire deck is stacked against them from the very start. To be honest, when you look at the raw data and the lived experiences of residents, the evidence of a two-tiered system becomes absolutely undeniable. We are witnessing a reality where massive multinational entities operate with total impunity, bypassing regulations with a wave of a hand, while a hardworking father can't even secure a basic building signature to repair his family's fire-damaged roof. When the law becomes a weapon against the small and a shield for the powerful, the system isn't just malfunctioning, it is fundamentally broken at its core. This isn't some minor, recent slip-up or a temporary oversight. It is the culmination of a long-standing pattern of systemic rot that has been allowed to fester for far too long.
But for 30 years, Nestle took water out of the San Bernardino National Forest under a permit that expired in 1988. And Coca-Cola is somehow allowed to take water from municipal water supplies, stick it in bottles, and sell it back to the taxpayers who own the water to begin with. 395,000 regulations, but somehow that slipped through the cracks? For a state that just loves to be up everybody's ass all the time, water management might be a better place to direct that instinct.
Consider the absolute nightmare that is the California Bullet Train, a project supposedly designed to link San Francisco to Los Angeles that has instead become a bottomless pit for taxpayer money. Since the initial approval back in 2008, a staggering $15.7 billion has already vanished into this bureaucratic black hole, with almost nothing to show for it but empty promises and broken ground. The project isn't just a little late. It is decades behind its original schedule, with the total projected price tag exploding from manageable levels toward a mind-numbing $128 billion. Maher delivered a stinging, viral analogy during his segment that resonated with frustrated citizens everywhere, regardless of their political leanings. He challenged the audience to imagine the sheer impossibility of trying to carve a monument like Mount Rushmore today under the suffocating weight of California's modern environmental and labor codes. Needless to say, he exposed the utter absurdity of the modern bureaucracy with zero apologies, highlighting a system that has become so complex it can no longer build anything of value.
But just as an exercise in realizing how far we've regressed as the can-do people, I think we should all try to imagine how it will go down if we tried to sculpt Mount Rushmore out of a mountain today. First, we'd have to make the mountain handicap accessible, so we could hire handicapped people to work on the side of a mountain. Then there'd be a 10-year delay while we studied the effect of construction noise on the mating habits of woodchucks. Then another 10 years to obtain ethnically sourced dynamite and find a sculptor who doesn't only work from home. And then another 2 years to apologize for being on Indian land And finally, after 50 years and a cost that had ballooned to $100 billion, we'd have half a nostril, and it wouldn't be Lincoln, it'd be Che Guevara.
That might sound like an exaggeration, but it's the cold, hard truth of the situation. When laws are created simply to satisfy a political base while paralyzing the average citizen, they lose all legitimacy. They aren't protections anymore. They are shackles. The fix is actually quite simple. We need leaders who understand that the state exists to serve the people, not to make their lives a misery. That requires common-sense legislation, burning the red tape, and focusing on tangible outcomes instead of political theater. When the government actually works, the people might finally start trusting it again. Until then, expect more of the same. Share your take in the comments and subscribe to stay informed on the stories they want to hide.